Jin-Woo's heart was racing. He had to get out of there, or he'd be in big trouble. That's all he could think about. He took off running, but his escape didn't last long. Out of nowhere, a huge pillar of sand burst up from the ground, blocking his path. The sound was deafening. Freesh! Jin-Woo grunted as he was knocked to the ground. He quickly scrambled back to his feet and brushed the sand out of his face. That's when he saw them. Not just one or two, but 7 giant centipedes had appeared, staring him down, with beady eyes. They let out a chilling screech. Scree! Jin-Woo turned pale as he stood there, feeling tiny compared to these creepy monsters. He couldn't help but swear under his breath. Just 4 hours later, Jin-Woo found himself back in his hospital room. He landed on the floor with a thud, and started coughing violently. His mouth felt gross, like it was filled with dirt. Cough, cough, oof. He hacked, trying to catch his breath. The inside of his mouth was all gritty and nasty. Jin-Woo's eyes stung from the sand that had gotten in. He groaned in pain, feeling miserable. After a while he collapsed onto the floor, too tired to even lift his hand. Huff, huff. What just happened? He panted, just as he was catching his breath. Another message popped up. Ping. It said, "You have completed the penalty quest." Jin-Woo scowled. Penalty quest. What did that even mean? What had he done to get in trouble? He thought back and remembered the daily quest he hadn't finished the day before. Was that the reason? He recalled a warning that said if he didn't complete the quest, there would be consequences. Huff, huff, so that really happened. It wasn't just his imagination playing tricks on him. This wasn't just a crazy dream. Jin-Woo knew that for sure. His lungs still hurt from all the running he'd done, and his leg throbbed where a centipede had scratched him. It had all really happened. He'd come super close to dying. That's not fair. Jin-Woo panted, trying to catch his breath. The penalty he'd faced had almost gotten him killed. Suddenly, Jin-Woo felt a weird, ominous feeling wash over him. Something strange was going on, and Jin-Woo had a feeling this wasn't the end of it. Just as he thought that, his device beeped again. Ping! He jumped in surprise, but luckily, it wasn't another quest popping up. Instead, a new message appeared. Your rewards for completing the penalty quest have been delivered. Do you want to check your rewards? Jin-Woo's eyes landed on one word. Rewards. What could that possibly mean? Jin-Woo was too exhausted to care about anything. He didn't have the energy to check what was going on around him, forgetting about rewards or anything else. All he wanted to do was sleep. As his eyes grew heavy, his vision started to blur. Before he knew it, he was fast asleep. The next morning, a nurse walked into Jin-Woo's room, and was shocked at what she saw. Jin-Woo was lying on the floor, surrounded by sand.
Oh dear.
What happened here? She exclaimed. The patient's body and clothes were completely covered in a mysterious substance. The nurse quickly threw his chart on the bed and frantically pressed the call button. We need more help in here. Now, she exclaimed. Suddenly the doctor in charge rushed into the room, looking worried. What's going on with Mr. Sung? He asked urgently. The nurse shook her head. I've no idea. He was fine when I checked on him last night. But this morning, this is how I found him. The doctor quickly took charge. Let's get him moved to the bed and figure out what's happening, he said. 1-2. Jin-Woo's friends lifted him onto the bed. But in the chaos, nobody saw that he had gotten a tiny paper cut from a chart that was thrown on the bed. The doctor stepped in to take a closer look at Jin-Woo. He checked him from head to toe, but couldn't find anything wrong with him. He's just sleeping, the doctor said. Looking relieved. The Hunters Association had asked that Jin-Woo get the best care possible, and it looked like everything was going to be okay. The doctor was worried that something bad might have happened to the young patient. Let him sleep, he's totally exhausted, he said. The doctor turned to leave, but then he looked around the room and scratched his head. You know, this room is a mess. It really needs to be cleaned, he told Nurse Yura. I'll leave that job to you. Nurse Yura replied. Yes, doctor. After the doctor left, Nurse Yura put her hand on her chest to calm her racing heart. She was relieved that everything was okay with the patient. As a nurse, she cared deeply about her patients, even if she didn't know them as well as their families did. No doctor or nurse wants to see someone they're taking care of get hurt. It's a big responsibility, and Nurse Yura took it very seriously. Hospitals for hunters were always filled with serious cases. The last thing they needed was someone getting hurt while they were trying to recover. Yura let out a sigh of relief. Phew. Now that she had calmed down, she started thinking about where to begin cleaning up. That's when she noticed something, drops of blood on the floor. Oh, she wondered. The blood was dripping from Jin-Woo's hand, which was hanging over the side of the bed. She jumped into action, grabbing his hand to take a closer look. She flipped it over, studying it carefully. What's going on? She wondered. There were streaks of blood on his hand, but where were they coming from? She wiped his hand clean, thinking maybe the blood was just hiding something, but nope, still nothing. Had his wound already healed? She looked up at Jin-Woo's face, feeling a bit nervous. He was sleeping peacefully, like a baby. Suddenly a loud ping filled the air. The daily quest has arrived. Jin-Woo's eyes snapped open. He sat up quickly and checked the time, his first thought being what hour it was. The clock on the wall showed 4:30 p.m., with 7.5 hours to go before midnight. That was plenty of time. He opened his inbox and a message popped up. Daily quest, strength training. The tasks were familiar. Do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and run 10 kilometers. Each one showed incomplete with a score of 0 out of 100. A warning flashed below. If he didn't finish these exercises, he'd face a penalty. His first thought was, this again. But as he thought about it some more, he started to see the good side. Jin-Woo was relieved that his new quest wasn't impossible or totally confusing. He'd get tired, but if he took his time, he could definitely do it. To start, Jin-Woo dropped to the floor and began doing push-ups. 1, he counted out loud. He didn't want to be pulled into some weird place where he'd have to face death again. 2, he was lucky to have made it through last night, but there were no promises he'd be so lucky today. 3, as Jin-Woo exercised, he glanced up at the quest screen and noticed that his push-ups were being counted. Suddenly, he heard a ping. You have completed 1 push-up. Push-ups 100 times. Incomplete 7/100. Then, another ping. You have completed 1 push-up. Push-ups 100 times. Incomplete 8/100. Jin-Woo was curious. So he tried something different. He lowered himself down halfway, then pushed back up. As he thought, it didn't count as a full push-up. Jin-Woo figured out why his push-ups hadn't counted the day before. If he didn't do them perfectly, they wouldn't be recorded. He was frustrated, but he kept going. Jin-Woo still had 50 push-ups to do. And after that, he had sit-ups, squats, and running to finish. Time flew by, and before he knew it, 3 hours had passed. He checked his progress. He had completed 100 perfect push-ups. He had done 100 sit-ups. He had finished 100 squats. But he still had a little way to go with his running. He had only done 9 kilometers of the 10 kilometers he needed to finish. Jin-Woo was bent over, panting heavily outside his room. He had just run around the hospital once, and was exhausted. Huff, 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 he breathed, trying to catch his breath. Jin-Woo's heart was racing like crazy, but he refused to give up. He had given it his all, and wasn't about to stop now. With a huge effort, he pushed open the door, and took 1 step inside. Just then, he heard a loud ping. A message popped up. He had run an amazing 10 kilometers. Jin-Woo had actually done it. Exhausted, he collapsed to his knees, panting heavily. His breath came out in short puffs. Huff. Jin-Woo was dripping with sweat, his forehead and back soaked. He panted heavily, trying to catch his breath. Suddenly a message popped up. Ping. He had completed his daily strength training quest. The message said he got rewards, and it asked if he wanted to check them out. At first, Jin-Woo thought about going straight to bed, just like he did the night before, but then he changed his mind. He was curious about these rewards, so he typed check. Ping. A new message appeared. It said, you have the following rewards. Reward. Imagine getting a bunch of amazing rewards all at once. The list was long and it made him wonder, why so many? As he looked closer, he saw that some of the rewards seemed really useful, but others were a mystery. One thing was for sure, he really needed the first reward, a full recovery. That was a no-brainer. He also got ability points +3 and a mystery box. The question was, should he take all of these rewards? Jin-Woo felt dizzy, like he was going to faint. But he knew the penalties for failing were no joke, so maybe the rewards for succeeding were real too. He didn't have anything to lose at this point. Would it really throw him into trouble after promising a reward? He took a chance and said, accept. Suddenly a pale blue glow surrounded him. It was a weird feeling. It reminded him of Juhi. Getting healed was like having a magic trick played on him whenever he got hurt. It felt amazing, like a big breath of fresh air filling his lungs and making everything new again. Whoosh! The blue energy that had been surrounding him started to disappear, and he felt a little sad about it. But he was also excited to see if he was really okay. He jumped up and down, stretched his arms and legs, and spun around in circles. Whoa, his heart stopped racing, and his breathing slowed down. Everything felt normal again. Jin-Woo felt amazing, like he had just woken up from a great night's sleep. Just moments before, he was about to collapse from exhaustion, but now he was refreshed and energized. Whatever had just happened, it was super effective. This is awesome. Jin-Woo's eyes lit up with excitement. He wasn't sure what kind of power was at work here, magic or something else, but it definitely left a strong impression. As he looked around, he wondered, were those special points for something? His gaze landed on a small box on the bed, and a screen floating in front of him. There was the mysterious box, but his attention was really on the stat screen. That was what mattered most right now. Jin-Woo Sung checked out his stats. And here's what he saw. Name: Jin-Woo Sung. Job: none. HP: 100. That's his health. Fatigue: 0. He's not tired at all. Level: and just starting out. Title: none. No special title for him yet. MP: 10. His magic points. His stats look like this: strength: 10. Stamina: 10. Agility: 10. Intelligence: 10. Perception: 10. He had 3 ability points available to make himself stronger. Jin-Woo also had some skills. Passive skill: unknown. It was already maxed out. Willpower: level 1. Active skill: dash level 1. These stats seemed kind of familiar. They were similar to what you'd see in a brand new character in an online game he used to play. Jin-Woo thought, are these really my current stats? And yeah, he was only at level 1 for now. His stats were nothing special. That wasn't a shock since he was known as the weakest of all E-rank hunters. But then he saw his skills, and that's what caught his eye. He had something called willpower as a passive skill, which meant it was always working in the background. His active skill was called dash, which he could use when he wanted to. The name sounded really familiar. He thought back to earlier that morning when he was running from centipedes in the penalty zone. He had gotten some messages then, and those words were in them. Suddenly, it all came flooding back. Willpower and dash were the exact words he had seen. Jin-Woo had been running for hours, pouring all his energy into it. That's when something cool happened. He learned 2 new skills, dash and willpower. At the time, he was so focused on racing around that he didn't think about what these skills meant. But now he was curious. Jin-Woo took a closer look at the details of his new skills. The first one was called dash. It was an active skill, which meant he could use it whenever he wanted. To activate it, he needed 5 mana. The description said that running had made his legs stronger. Get ready to move super fast. When you turn on your speed boost, you'll get a 30% increase. Just remember, it uses up some of your mana 1 point every minute. You also have a special skill called willpower. It's always working in the background, and the best part is that it doesn't use up any mana. This means you have endless willpower. When your stamina gets really low, below 30%, willpower kicks in and helps protect you. You'll take 50% less damage, which is a huge help. It's pretty cool that you can learn new skills like dash and willpower by keeping at it and not giving up. All that running paid off. It makes sense when you think about it. Persistence really does pay off. This was a game changer. If he did the same thing over and over and met one simple condition, he might just pick up a brand new skill. That's incredible, he exclaimed. This was a huge perk for hunters. Normally they could only get new skills when they first became hunters, or by learning from special rune stones, and those stones were super hard to come by. Usually you had to defeat a powerful A-rank magic beast to get one. Rune stones can be super pricey, costing anywhere from hundreds of millions to billions of won. In fact, the most expensive one ever sold went for a whopping 7 billion won at an auction. This special stone had the power to heal many people all at once, and it was bought by a top-notch healer from another country, who spent every last penny they had. When Jin-Woo heard about this, his heart started beating fast. He thought about how awesome it would be to have a runestone that could increase his speed and reduce the damage he took in battles. These skills were awesome, even if they couldn't compare to one that cost 1 billion won. The best part, Jin-Woo got them for free. He was super excited, but he knew it might be tough to use them properly, since he didn't have a lot of magic. One skill in particular caught his eye: willpower. It said it didn't need any mana, which probably meant magic. That sounded like a game changer to Jin-Woo. This was a game changer. Even if Jin-Woo didn't have a lot of magic, he could still use his willpower as much as he wanted. But then he saw something weird, unknown. It was one of his passive skills, which meant it should kick in automatically. The problem was, there was no other info about what it did. No clues, no hints. Jin-Woo figured it wasn't worth trying to figure out, since he didn't have anything to go on. He'd just have to wait and see what happened with this mysterious unknown skill. He turned his attention to something new, his ability points. He had 3 points to spend, but he hadn't used them yet. Here were his current stats: strength, 10 stamina, 10 agility, 10 intelligence, 10 perception, 10. He had 3 ability points, just waiting to be used. This meant he could boost 3 of his stats, by 1 point each. His stats were all pretty low, probably because he was only level 1. But if this was all really happening, the choices he made would actually matter. Jin-Woo's face turned serious as he thought about his situation. If his abilities changed based on what he chose, how was he supposed to make a decision? He looked at the options in front of him: strength, stamina, agility, intelligence, and perception. Some of these words were easy to understand, like strength, which probably meant power. Stamina and agility were also familiar terms, often used in video games to describe a character's stats. But intelligence and perception were a mystery. Jin-Woo wished the system would explain what these words meant, but it wasn't being very helpful. Without knowing what he was getting into, making a choice seemed impossible. Imagine if you could make yourself smarter or have super sharp senses. Would it really help Jin-Woo? He's a hunter who fights tough battles, so he needs something more. What he really wants is to be strong, fast, or have lots of energy. If he had to choose, power would be the best. Just think about it, being super strong would make his job so much easier. He was curious about what would happen to his body if he boosted his stats, so he decided to put all his points into strength, thinking it would be the most noticeable change. "I'll add 3 points to strength," he said. Suddenly a ping sounded, and his stats appeared on the screen: strength, 13 stamina, 10 agility, 10 intelligence, 10 perception, 10. He had no more ability points left, but as he looked at the numbers, he thought, is that it? The only difference was that his strength score had jumped from 10 to 13 on the hologram screen in front of him. That was it. Jin-Woo didn't feel any super cool energy surging through his body like you see in anime or movies. Has anything changed? He wondered. To find out, Jin-Woo decided to test his strength. He stood next to his bed and tried to lift it. The bed was heavy, but it wasn't as hard to lift as he thought it would be. Still, Jin-Woo wasn't sure if this meant he was actually stronger, or if the bed just wasn't that heavy to begin with. It would have been nice to know how heavy the bed was, before he added his points. Now that he'd already used them up, it was tough to compare. He wished he had more points to use. Jin-Woo frowned, thinking about this, when suddenly something popped into his head. The rewards for the penalty quest were finally here. Jin-Woo had almost gotten killed, but he'd managed to complete it. And as a bonus, he got a notification that his rewards were waiting for him. He quickly opened his inbox and found the message. His eyes widened as he read. "Your rewards for completing the penalty quest have been delivered. Would you like to check your rewards?" Jin-Woo didn't hesitate. Of course, he wanted to see what he'd gotten. "I knew it," he exclaimed, pumping his fist in excitement. Then he saw the list of rewards. "You have the following rewards. Reward 1. Jin-Woo scored a sweet reward, 3 ability points and a mystery box. But he wasn't interested in the box. He just wanted those ability points. Luckily he got 3 points, just like he hoped. "Add 3 points to strength," he exclaimed excitedly. Pun. His stats updated: strength, 16 stamina, 10 agility, 10 intelligence, 10 perception, 10 available ability points, 0. His strength jumped from 13 to 16. Jin-Woo stood next to the bed, flexing his arms to see the difference. He was pumped. Jin-Woo was amazed. Lifting the bed was a breeze now. He had been wondering if he was really getting stronger, and now he knew for sure. "It really works," he exclaimed. The numbers didn't lie. His strength had shot up by 60%. That's a huge difference. Jin-Woo felt like he was on top of the world. He started lifting all sorts of things in his hospital room, like chairs and tables, and making a big racket while he did it. Jin-Woo was having a blast, but his fun was cut short. The head nurse happened to be walking by and overheard the commotion. She poked her head into the room, giving him a stern look. I'm so sorry, Jin-Woo let out a sigh of relief as she left. He breathed a sigh of relief, woo, but he couldn't calm down. His heart was racing like crazy. It was pounding so hard, it almost hurt. Every day there would be a new challenge with awesome rewards. As long as this amazing phenomenon didn't suddenly disappear, his life was about to get a whole lot better. He could leave his old life behind and start fresh. This was an incredible chance. Jin-Woo's stat screen even showed his level, but how could he increase it? He shook his head thinking, no way. That's probably not going to happen. Leveling up seemed like a distant dream. He didn't dare get his hopes up. For now, completing quests and getting rewards was enough. He would use ability points to boost his attributes instead. He was getting stronger every day. Yesterday he was weak, but today he's a little tougher, and tomorrow, he'll be even stronger than that. Every single day he's becoming more powerful. It sounds crazy, but the weakest hunter of all time is actually getting stronger. His fellow hunters would burst out laughing if they knew. The ones who were C or D rank would probably fall over each other, making fun of him. They couldn't imagine the weakest hunter of all mankind becoming strong. Jin-Woo Sung was on a mission to get stronger. People used to call him the weakest hunter of all mankind, and it didn't bother him if they laughed. He was actually really glad to have this chance. But then he started thinking, is this what it means to have a reawakening? It's super rare, but sometimes a low-ranking hunter can become one of the best. After going through a reawakening, Jin-Woo wondered if that could be him. Had all the hunters who got stronger by reawakening gone through this weird thing? Jin-Woo was determined to find out. He sat down at the computer in his room, a fancy perk from the association's VIP package. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he started searching for answers. The sound of typing filled the air. Tap, tap, tap. He searched everywhere online, looking for answers. He checked tons of websites, even one that only people with hunter licenses could use. He spent money to access some special documents that were blocked unless you paid. But no matter where he looked, he couldn't find a single case like his. It just wasn't the same. What was happening to him was totally different from what they called a reawakening. When hunters got their powers back after a reawakening, it happened in a similar way to how they first became hunters. But his situation was unique. Imagine being able to see your strengths and weaknesses like in a video game. That's what happened to Jin-Woo. He could hear things when he was almost dead, and he had a special screen that showed him his stats. It was like something out of a game. He could even make himself stronger by using points. Jin-Woo wasn't sure if anyone else had experienced this, so he decided to post about it online. He went to a secret forum where only hunters like him could see what he wrote. His post was anonymous, so nobody knew it was him. The title of his post was "Something Strange Happened." In the post he wrote, "I started seeing my stats on a screen that floats in front of me, just like in a video game. And the craziest part is, I can upgrade them." The comments under the post went crazy. People were typing all sorts of mean things. "You're so weird," and "Get a grip," were just a few of the nasty comments. Some people even asked if Jin-Woo was a cartoonist, or if he played too many video games. One person told him to go to the hospital, but amidst all the negativity, one person said, "I want to hear more about what happened." Jin-Woo let out a frustrated sigh. He had just wasted a lot of time reading through all those comments, and didn't get anything good out of it. The mean words just kept coming, with people saying things like "stop letting anyone on this site." It was all really disappointing for Jin-Woo.